Welcome back to our channel. I want to thank you for joining. If you are joining for the first time, we encourage you to smash the like button and watch some other informative geopolitical discussions here at the Explorer. It is important to note that the country of China has proven to the United States of America that it's not a lapdog. At the moment, China is ready to take the trade war to whatever extent that the United States of America wants to take it. It is important to note that China is a very important economy in the global community, and some will call China to be the manufacturing capital of the world. It is vital to know that China is not backing down and is ready to take this particular trade war to whatever extent the United States of America wants to take it. Why is this important? It is important because China is a major player in the global south, and global south countries are observing very closely on how the country of China will respond to the United States of America, irrespective of how you perceive this particular relationship. The United States of America recently jacked the trade percentages to about 104%, and the country of China jacked it up to 84%. We've heard the United States of America's president, Mr. Donald Trump, is saying that he wants to move it to about 125%. But I think Chinese officials are saying that bring it on, and we're going to move this to whatever extent it could go.
Okay, here's an interesting one for you. United States President Donald Trump announced a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs, except for China, and that was effective immediately. Trump says he will be raising tariffs on Beijing to 125%, as accusing them of being disrespectful. Ultimately, they retaliated. Of course, China had slapped the United States with 84% tariffs in retaliation to Trump's initial announcement then to raise tariffs on that country. Now, the president of the U.S. claims to have received calls from over 75 countries to negotiate a solution, now announcing a 10% tariff in the interim for this 90-day period.
However, the country of the United States of America has come to the realization that global economy has changed and countries are not what they used to be before. And China, to an extent, has demonstrated that it's not just a small country. To an extent, it's telling the United States of America that you are number one and I'm number two in terms of economy, and we are also going to cause you some pain in several areas. As the news media has pointed out, it is the United States of American consumers that are going to suffer with regards to this particular trade war, as we see. As South Africa has 31% at the moment, and the country of Lesotho is feeling the pinch also to an extent. More importantly, China has demonstrated that I'm not just kind of a small economy somewhere that you can push back and forth, and China has opened the doors for negotiations to an extent. However, Mr. Trump is also saying that despite backing up with regards to what is perceived as opening the doors based on his own discussion, that about 70 countries have called the United States of America administration to talk on some kind of negotiation. I don't know if that's true according to what the news media is saying, but you know who Mr. Trump is. He can say something today and then tomorrow it's something else. So maybe he's playing with emotions across the global community as markets tumble, and to an extent is coming back again. We're seeing this particular behavior from the United States of America. Experts describe this as arrogance in terms of trade discussions and negotiation.
The trade conflict between the United States and practically the rest of the world has taken a sudden turnaround courtesy of U.S. President Donald Trump. The president now says that he's suspending tariffs on most nations for the next 90 days except China. Wall Street is soaring on the news. You can see the graph right there. It speaks for itself. Shares immediately jumped more than 6% on the news. Markets had been falling sharply for days, expecting a global trade war, but that now seems to be off the table, at least for the next 90 days. The White House has been commenting on this announcement from the U.S. president. Take a listen.
As you all know, the president just put out a statement announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125%. because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States. And as I said at the podium yesterday, when you punch at the United States of America, President Trump is going to punch back harder. In that same vein, we have had more than 75 countries from around the world reach out to President Trump and his team here at the White House to negotiate better trade deals for the American worker. We have been overwhelmed with the amount of requests from countries around the world. I'll let the Secretary speak to that. We will continue with the tailor-made negotiations that I spoke about yesterday. In the meantime, there will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs as these negotiations are ongoing, and the tariff level will be brought down to a universal 10% tariff.
Make no mistake, Mr. Trump to an extent is talking about seeing on how to negotiate tariffs that he perceived that the United States of America has been deceived or is not being treated fairly in terms of trade discussions or negotiation. But more importantly, China is reminding the United States of America that we are also a major player in terms of the global development and economic perspective. Major companies of the United States of America like Apple, other very important companies manufacture their products in China, and to an extent it's the United States of America's consumers that are going to pay more. I wonder how trade is being perceived in the US, talking about the tariffs. I've never heard that tariffs have been paid by the countries that are making the products, because it will normally be paid by the individuals in the particular country. So it is important that South Africa to an extent stand its ground to the United States of America geopolitically, making sure that its own interest is respected to an extent. But more importantly, global South countries like Brazil, India, Russia, the country of South Africa, looking at Ethiopia and other very important players across this particular block of business, they are observing this particular response from China. It's going to be very important and strategic. What China does at this stage will go ahead to exemplify how they perceive China standing up to the United States of America in a trade perspective.
Let's unpack this a little bit more, because it can get a little bit confusing. Professor David Munyai is the director of the Center for Africa China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Professor, thank you so much for the time. We're going to discuss the South Africa impact in just a short while, but I wanted to just start right at the top here. If one was to quote the more popular book that relates to Donald Trump, The Art of the Deal, one could ask the question whether he says there's a lot of negotiating going on. Is this really the art of the deal?
It's part of his plan, but it's quite misplaced. But this is the man for the last 40 years has been thinking of doing precisely what's going on now. But it has brought a lot of confusion on the market. And having done that and pose, it has weakened his hand greatly. However, the tension with China has a huge implication, given the fact that these two countries are a global economy number 1 and 2. And it has huge implication for the entire system that we know. On globalization, on issues of rules, WTO, the G20. So we are up for a rocky 4 years of his rule.
Again, the United States of America failed to understand that the global South countries, and more importantly, global economies have shifted to an extent. No country is an island to do business. Trade is important on all countries. Other countries like Lesotho have been slammed with 50%, and South Africa at the moment is with 31%. The question here many experts are asking that, was this particular trade war being brewed by the United States to narrow it down with China together?
Does this prove that his fight is actually with China as opposed to the rest of the world? We don't know how the rest of the world got involved in all of this, including South Africa, of course, but that his war and his fight has always been against his adversary, the world number 2 economy, China.
China is number 1, but I mean, if you look, it has gone beyond China. In the first his first administration of Trump, I mean, it was just China. Now it has gone beyond China. EU, domestically, I mean, the vendetta he has with all the cases and humiliation he suffered throughout the campaign. And the man is rolling in a manner that has a huge implication on all our economies, particularly on the African continent.
Because I don't see what the European Union is doing. Europe, to an extent, is kind of taking it so slow in terms of responding to the United States of America. It is an indication that the European Union takes much time to make decisions, but China has proven that It's not going to listen to XYZ to make its choices. It can stand its grounds to the United States of America. The European Union seems to speak to 27 countries to figure out what it needs to do to the United States of America. But again, the US should understand, more importantly, that at this particular time, companies like Tesla and very close allies like Elon Musk are feeling the pressure, and they understand what the supply chain could mean, as most of their manufacturing issues come from China. These are vital times in the country's economy, and the United States of America is feeling the pinch. More importantly, it is the US consumer, based on news media conversation and experts that are going to fund the bill.
All right, that announcement coming from the White House in just the last couple of minutes. I'm going to cross over now to our correspondent, Janelle Dumaloun. She's in Washington covering this developing story for us. So, Janelle, this is a big change. Walk us through what we are seeing here. I guess walk us through what we are not seeing for China.
Well, never a dull moment here, Brent, I can tell you that. And you've outlined quite a bit of it already, but just to reiterate, there will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs that were meant to be implemented this week, that were announced last week, that reciprocal tariff will be brought down to a baseline level for all affected countries except China to 10%. And let me tell you, for that part, there was a bit of confusion, because remember that 10% was the baseline already, and then there were differing reciprocal tariff rates for each sort of country that was thought to make up, that was from a formula derived based on the trade deficit between the U.S. and that country, and then there was a 10% on top of that. So we did not know if that meant that only the 10%, whether that baseline 10% that was originally announced would still apply. But now Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, has confirmed that what the president does mean is that this 10% reciprocal tariff will apply universally to all countries except China. So China, they're adding another 20% to the tariffs that they have already imposed on Chinese imports. So that brings the total up to 124%. And that really tells you that perhaps this trade war is a trade war that is largely concentrated on China.
It is vital that South Africa, a very important economy in the continent of Africa and a major global South player, should note that at this time it should to an extent not waver in terms of the position that it has taken in several very important global issues, as South Africa has come under tremendous pressure based on its position on several issues. More importantly, again, the United States of America perceives South Africa to be doing some kind of things, according to Mr. Trump's own comments based on media report. But more importantly, South Africa is an important player in terms of international community and business. It is South African farmers and those in the United States of America that are going to feel this particular pressure. But again, it goes down to also explain that China is not just an ordinary economy, that it has its own particular importance in several areas, and most manufacturing companies in the European Union and the United States of America move their manufacturing facilities to China to manufacture products extensively expensive to do those particular services in Europe or in the United States of America.
Who wins off the back of something like this, where you have these tariffs on, you have them off, you have them on again, you have them off? Who's going to ultimately win in a case like this?
It's a lose-lose. And as you know, markets do not like uncertainty. And what he has been doing is to inject that. And markets are going in a zigzag on an hourly basis. And that's not the way of managing economy. And it also weakens his allies, whatever kind of a trade war he wants to do with China. So what we're having, it's a world in which US is isolating itself, and you have Europe and China and all of us among the BRICS as well as the global South still believing in globalization, believing that there's certain rules that need to govern trade. However, Trump is all to dismantle all what we know.
Let me know in the comment section what you think regards to how China responded the United States of America if this portrays some level of strength economically, and how the global South countries will perceive China's position, and what would have happened if China would have backed down, not respond to the United States of America, or retaliate to an extent if you want to use that particular word. For now, I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.